How's everyone doing tonight? All right. We're going to go ahead and give it just a few more minutes. We're still not quite at 7 o'clock, and see if anybody else is still on their way before we get started. So. Talk about that a bit. Did everybody grab one of the handouts? If not, if you want extras, we do have more on the back counter there. So. Actually 2 tabs here. So it is nice, right? Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Do appreciate it. I know it's kind of cold out there, and I know it's going to be late by the time we're done. I've got a ton of info to get through, so just bear with me. We're going to hold all questions till the end so we make sure we don't stay too late tonight. First off, let me introduce myself for those who don't know. My name is Megan Cannell. I'm the Crime Prevention Officer here with the city. This is my partner, Marlene Navarro. We're both in the Public Safety Office, so if you have any questions about anything that we're presenting tonight that you don't think of right away but you think of later on, you can always give us a call, and we'll give you our phone number at the end tonight so that you guys, if you think of anything or if you have anything that's public safety related in regards to neighborhood watch, crime trends, graffiti, anything else like that, you can go ahead and give us a call. I'm going to show you guys a little video first. This video is a little over 2 years old, and it was done for the Great California Shakeout. Basically, it depicts a scenario of if a 7+ magnitude earthquake were to hit on the San Andreas Fault today.
It's a sunny morning in Southern California. Across the region, 7.5 million people are busy at work. Several 100,000 of them are commuting to jobs in different counties, far from where they live. Over 200,000 commuters work and reside on opposite sides of the San Andreas Fault. Today, these families and many others across the region will be separated. 1,800 people will die. 53,000 people will be injured. And $213 billion in damage will occur. It's 10 a.m. The largest earthquake to hit Southern California in modern times has just begun. Some people react appropriately. Others don't. In the intense shaking, nearly 1,500 buildings collapse. Infrastructure is severely compromised, and 300,000 buildings suffer significant damage. The rupture travels 200 miles northwest along the San Andreas Fault, violent shaking lasting as long as 2 minutes in some areas. Finally, the earthquake is over. Many of the lifelines of Southern California have been disrupted. A large number of people are trapped in collapsed buildings. Over 1,600 fires start, some turning into super conflagrations. Millions of people are trying to use their phones, causing the system to become overloaded. In the months ahead, there will be tens of thousands of aftershocks. Residents will struggle to recover from the earthquake. There will be no water for weeks or months, and no electricity. Traveling from point to point within the city will be extremely difficult, and 255,000 people displaced from their homes. We are all in this together. We will suffer the consequences if we don't do our part right now. How quickly life gets back to normal after this disaster is up to you and those around you. Your level of personal preparedness will determine your quality of life after the quake. It's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and enough water for each person in your household to have at least 1 gallon of water a day for 3 days. Have an emergency plan. Decide now where you will meet your family after an earthquake. Make sure there's a person out of town you can contact to let your loved ones know that you're okay. Homeowners should be sure to bolt their house to its foundation. Consider whether earthquake insurance makes sense for you as part of your financial plan. Even if you're not a homeowner, you can secure your personal possessions against earthquake damage. Preparedness is not only for the home, but also for business. Be sure that your company has emergency plans for a major earthquake. Empower yourself and your family. Be prepared.
So, as you can see, it's plausible. I mean, it took 300 scientists to put this together, all the data, the geological data, the socioeconomic data, the financial data, all these different things together. This is very realistic. If this were to happen today, that's pretty much exactly what would happen. As we all know, earthquakes are not the only disaster. We've got just about anything. We've had snowstorms here. We had snow just last month. A couple years ago, we had a blizzard that stranded thousands of people either side of the Soledad Pass. I mean, about 5,000 were stuck in Santa Clarita, about 5,000 were stuck up here, couldn't get either way. Fires, like the station fire, flash floods. I mean, we do live in a desert. We do have hard, dry ground out here, and when it does start raining, like, I don't know if you guys remember from about 2004, 2005, when the rains were so heavy for so long that Bouquet Canyon and San Francisco Canyon roads completely washed out. So there are different things. We have a major train line that runs right through the heart of both Lancaster and Palmdale. If a train were to derail, what might happen. Would there be a chemical spill? Would there be damage to nearby businesses? For example, up here along Sierra Highway, right up here near the station, there are a lot of businesses right there. So just some things to keep in mind, that earthquakes aren't the only thing. They are the most common that we're going to see here in Southern California. It's going to be earthquakes or fires. And quite frankly, here in the heart of Lancaster, it's a flat desert. There's not a whole lot that fire is going to cause us worry for. Now, if you have friends or family, or if you drive across the mountains, that's a different story. But you do need to be prepared for any kind of hazard. We've got Edwards Air Force Base just to the north of us, and we've got Plant 42 here in Palmdale, terrorist targets, potentially. So it's just something to keep in mind. And even if you move out of the area, say you get to retire and move to Florida, well, now you've got hurricanes. You decide you want to move to the Midwest, well, now you've got tornadoes. Just different things in different areas. So you need to have an all hazards mindset when you're preparing for an emergency. Go ahead. So what is emergency preparedness exactly? It's exactly that. It's being prepared for an emergency situation, whether it's natural or man-made, and of any duration. Okay, it could be significant like an earthquake or a major fire. It could be short-term like an extended power outage for 12 or 16 or 20 hours. It could be localized like a plane crash. It could be quite large like an act of war or something like that. But by being prepared ahead of time, you significantly increase your success and your ease in dealing with it. It becomes a lot easier. So some basic steps to getting prepared. One thing that you want to keep in mind, if you spread it out over a year, it's going to make it a lot easier on yourself. It's easier to fit into your budget. It's easier to fit into your schedule. Trying to do everything in a day, like they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to be able to learn everything and get everything you need in a day unless you happen to be Donald Trump or Bill Gates and have lots of money at your disposal. I know I don't. So you can break it down. But there are some basic things you need to do. You need to assemble a disaster kit, and not just for your house, but for your car, or if you have multiple cars, one for each car, and for your workplace. If you have a spouse or a roommate, make sure they have one too. If you have kids, make sure there's one at their school. You need to develop a plan. Okay, this is where we're going to meet. This is what we're going to do afterwards. These are the sorts of things that we're going to be looking at and needing to keep in mind. These are where we're going to keep things, so we've got them on hand. And you got to learn and review essential skills and practice them regularly. First aid and CPR, drop, cover, and hold, using a fire extinguisher, all these sorts of things, even shutting off your utilities. It's all well and good to know you have to do it, but if you don't at least review it every so often, you're going to forget which one's the gas shutoff valve and which one unbolts the meter from the line. And then you also need to mitigate your risk. Things like securing your belongings. Like the video said, securing your personal belongings can go a long way, especially since earthquake insurance has high deductibles. If you only have $5,000 worth of personal stuff because you're like a lot of people and you're struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck, and you've got a $10,000 deductible, well, if all your stuff gets damaged, it's not going to get replaced by your insurance. So the more you can do to mitigate it, the better. Now, when it comes to assembling a disaster kit, there's a few things to keep in mind. You need some essential items: food, water, first aid. Those are the bare minimum. There are some important supplies beyond that: flashlight, a radio, batteries, tools like a can opener, a crescent wrench to shut off your gas, things like that. You also need to have comfort and other useful items like cash. If you've got kids, maybe a stuffed animal or a book or a small board game that the family can play to pass the time. Extra clothes. Now, for those of you who have taken CERT training with Captain Scott Polgar from the Lancaster Fire Prevention Office, you're probably very familiar with this. 3 kits, 3 days, 3 items. It's known as the rule of threes. 3 kits means home, work, and car. 3 days is your minimum guideline, enough to get by for 3 days at a minimum, because that's the soonest that emergency personnel are likely to be able to get into your neighborhood, and that's if you're lucky, to be quite honest, in a major disaster. And then 3 items: water, food, and everything else. Utility items, they call it. Like I said, don't forget your car kit. It's useful for when disaster strikes, if you're away. So say you go grocery shopping and something happens while you're at the store. You've got a kit in your car. If you're stranded while you're driving, for those who may have been watching the news when the last snowstorm hit and the, what's that called? Tejon Pass? Is that what it's called? Going up through Gorman on the 5. The freeway was shut down completely for several hours. Thousands and thousands of people were stuck in Castaic. They were stuck on their car on the freeway because they're between off-ramps, and it's miles between off-ramps, so they can't just pull off to the side of the road and go to the next off-ramp. They're stuck. And if that happens to you and you're stuck in your car on the freeway, whether it's 5 degrees or 105 degrees or 55 degrees, you want to have some food and some water, maybe a blanket or two, some things that are going to keep you comfortable and keep you good. When it comes to your car, you need to include some vehicle-specific items. You need to have jumper cables if you get stuck with a dead battery, or if you're stranded on the freeway and you're trying to keep your AC going because it's the middle of summer, and maybe you've got enough gas but your battery dies because you were listening to the radio or you had the AC on too long, or whatever have you. Flares or safety triangles if you happen to get stranded because of a flat tire or something like that, so that you can let other drivers know, hey, watch out, I'm here on the side of the road. Again, those jumper cables might come in handy if your hazards are on so long that your battery dies. Go back. You also need a work kit, and a work kit's going to look a lot like your home kit but smaller, and it's going to be basically just for you unless you have other family members that work at the same place that you do. Basically, your work kit is just for a few days because chances are you're not going to be stranded at work for more than a few days. But you need to have 3 days worth of water and some food and snacks, comfortable change of shoes if you work in an office setting and you wear dress shoes or high heels or sandals or anything like that. The nice thing about having 3 kits is you can combine them. Earthquake hits while you're at work. You manage to get out of there. You grab your work kit, you take it with you and put it in your car. You're able to get home. Well, now you've got your work and your car kits. You take them with you into your house and you've got all 3 kits. You can combine them and now you've got an extended survival kit that can last for a week or more. In fact, most emergency preparedness organizations these days are recommending anywhere from 7 to 14 days as your minimum guideline for how much supply you should have on hand. I'm going to go over, before we get into family plan, I'm going to go over a few things specifically. In your handout, the second page talks about your disaster kit. Now remember, I said prepare in a year. Do a little bit each month. A little each month is better than nothing at all, but it's a lot easier than trying to do everything at once. If you try and get your whole disaster kit, especially if you're doing 3 kits and you try and do it all at once, you're looking at a few $100 in one pop. Especially if you've got a family, you've got kids, a spouse, pets, anything like that. It's going to get pricey. I'm not going to lie to you. But you can make it easy by doing just a few things each month. $20 a month will go a long way. So you start with the most essential items and the easiest items to get. Water. You can't live without water. You can go for a week or more without food, but you can't go more than a couple days without water. It's just, you can't do it. You have to have water. That is the single most critical item that you will ever have in your emergency kit. If you take prescription medication, talk to your doctor. See if they have samples. See if he can write you as an extra prescription, and then you fill both prescriptions. You stick one in your kit, and you use one. When your daily one runs out, you take the one out of your kit and use it, and then you go refill the other one and stick that in your kit. So you're constantly rotating it out to keep what's in your kit fresh, because medicines do expire. Eyeglasses, if you wear eyeglasses. I, for example, wear reading glasses. When I get a new pair, I put the old pair in a hard case in my kit. It doesn't cost me any extra because I'm buying new glasses anyway, but why throw these old glasses out? I can stick those in my kit so I still have something that's there so I can still read. If you need eyeglasses just to see, that's definitely something you're going to want to do. If your glasses are on your nightstand, it's the middle of the night and the earthquake hits and they go flying off, or you step on them because you're still asleep and you can't see because they don't have them on yet, you need to have that spare there. Second month, more important items, first aid kit, some kind of utility wrench or a crescent wrench. As an example of a utility wrench, okay, there's a couple different kinds. This is called a 4-in-1. Sorry, it's got a little bit of hair in it from my kit. It's called a 4-in-1 because you've got gas shutoff, and this is for if you happen to have a slightly different size valve on your gas shutoff. You got a pry bar-like thing, like at the end of a crowbar. You've got a pry hook, And then this end is to shut off your water at the street, at the meter. We don't recommend that, but if all else fails, you can at least, it's still an option for you to do. There are some that are just a straight bar with some slats in them. You can use just a plain old crescent wrench with the little adjustable dial on it. You know, something to shut off your gas. If you have propane, it's not going to be as critical, but it's still not a bad idea to have. You never know where it's going to come in use. It could double as a hammer. You know, if you need to hammer something in, just hit it on the flat part. Works great. So, third month is when you're going to want to start getting your food. And you can order this any way you want. I mean, these are just a suggestion that we have for you. But your food, I've got some examples of some non-perishable food items that are good to have. You want to have things that you can eat straight out of the can. Soups, chili, fruit, vegetables, more soup. You also want to have some snacks and things, comfort food, cookies, crackers, little snacks like these little pretzel balls or trail mix or anything like that, fruit roll-ups. And it's not just because you might have kids, but it's for you too. I mean, if you were eating nothing but cold canned food for 4 days, wouldn't you go crazy? I know I would. I'd be like, where's the chocolate? That being said, chocolate and other candies of that sort are a bad idea because chocolate does go bad, particularly if it's in your car kit because your car is exposed to extreme temperatures. Your trunk doesn't have the same insulation that your house does. It doesn't have a thermostat that's running the heat or the air conditioner when the car's off and nobody's in it. So you need to make sure that you've got stuff that's going to keep. You need to check it every 6 months. Every 6 months, go through it. Okay, it's getting close. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to use it. I'm going to replace it with brand new stuff that's going to last a while longer. Most canned goods have a shelf life of between a year and 3 to 4 years. You can get disaster food like MREs, meals ready to eat. You can get disaster bars like this right here. So a little brick, and you just nibble on one little piece of the bar, and that's supposed to be enough food to last you for a few days. And I don't want to nibble on that. I'll stick with my canned food, thank you. Nice thing about the disaster food is you get a lot of calories, so it will last you a long time. It's got an incredibly long shelf life, between 5 and 10 years, depending on what you get, and it takes up very little space compared to canned food because it's all super dehydrated and it is ultra compact, so it's not going to weigh as much to move around. It's not going to be as big to move around. Some other things that you need to make sure you have: portable AM/FM radio, whether it's battery operated, solar, hand crank, doesn't matter. Anything you've got that's battery operated, have spare batteries. It only does you good if you can actually make it work. Sunscreen, believe it or not, if it's the middle of summer and you've got no shelter and no shade, you're going to want some sunscreen because you'll start to burn pretty quickly. You might not burn on average being out in the sun all day, but after 2 or 3 days, it's going to add up. Bleach. You don't need to go out of control. You don't need to go crazy. If you want, you can just get a little sealable screw top bottle and just fill it with some bleach from your laundry supplies. No fragrances, no additives, no colors, just plain old chlorine bleach. The reason for that is if you run out of your own drinking water and you need to get water from other sources that may not be clean, you can treat it so that it's safe to drink. Flashlights. If you don't want to do flashlights, you can do a glow stick. And I'm actually going to open this up for those. I'm sure everyone here has seen a glow stick, but maybe not. Just a little chemical glow stick. Kids love these. You just snap it, shake it up, and there you go. Come in all different colors. You can get them for, I think I got this one for about $1. Sometimes you can get them for, 2-pack for $1.50. Get them at any of the big box discount stores, any of the hardware stores, Halloween stores. In fact, Halloween's a great time to buy them because they're usually on sale. Or right after Halloween. Camping stores have them. It's a great thing to have. The only thing about these is that you can't turn them off, and once they're done, they're done. There's no replacing the batteries on these. But they're small. Kids like them. They work great. They're non-toxic. You don't have to worry about carrying extra. You can hang it places. I mean, it's got a little hook on it. It comes with the lanyard. Most of them do. You can stick through the hole, wear it around your neck, so you don't have to hold on to it. All sorts of neat things like that. If you have babies, and I'm talking diapers, however old, if your kids haven't started potty training yet, if you have any kids in diapers, make sure you've got diapers, make sure you've got wipes. You may want to keep some diaper rash cream or some baby powder in there too, just a small thing of it. Make sure you change out the diapers every so often because your kid's going to grow, and if you put in size 1 diapers and when the earthquake hits your kid's in size 5 and getting ready to wear pull-ups, size 1 diapers probably aren't going to cut it. Women, feminine supplies. You don't know when this is going to happen, so if you need them, put them in there. Change of clothes for each person. A lot of people don't think about this. If all you've got is the clothes on your back when you get out that front door and you can't get back in, what's on you and what's in your kid is all you're going to have. If you have a change of clothes in there, at least you can put on some real clothes and not be walking around for 4 or 5 days in your nightgown. So, just something to consider. For kids, make sure you change the clothes out every so often as they grow, because just like with diapers, they won't fit anymore, and it doesn't do any good to be trying to fit a 10-year-old into a 6-year-old's pants. So, it doesn't have to be brand new, fancy, something that maybe it's a little loose now or it's a little bit tight. You can throw that in there if it's got a hole in it, if you've got jeans that are ripped or frayed. It doesn't have to be perfect, just something. Instead of throwing it out, stick it in your kit. Extra shoes, something comfortable that you can walk in. I'm wearing my sneakers today, as an example. I've got some boots there. Just something. You don't want to be stuck in your high heels for 3 days. You don't want to be stuck in flip-flops for 3 days, or slippers for going to bed. You want to have something comfortable that you can actually get around, and it's actually going to protect your feet from broken glass, fallen debris, all that kind of stuff. If you have little kids, and I would say 5 and under, if not older, make sure you've got a couple of extra pairs of shoes. Kids lose shoes quickly. Trust me on that. A fire extinguisher. And I'll get more into that in a little bit, but there's one of our fire extinguishers from here at City Hall. Get the biggest one that you can afford and reasonably manage. Okay? Don't get the biggest one you can manage if it's out of your price range. Don't get the biggest one you can afford if you can't even lift it up. It does you no good. So get the biggest one that you can both afford and reasonably manage. For most of us, roughly that size is what you're going to be looking for. They're a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Smaller ones typically you'll find under the, like on a boat or in the trunk or under the driver's seat of a car. That's what they're more designed for, small spaces like that, maybe a garage workshop. For most of us, that's pretty much the size you're going to want to get. If you can manage and afford bigger, by all means do it. Blankets, solar blankets. And I'm not going to open this up because I'll never get it folded back up. Solar blankets are amazing. This little tiny thing fits in your back pocket, takes up no space in a kit, it weighs nothing. If you're paying $2 for one of these, you're paying too much. You should be getting them for $1.50 or less. And it opens up pretty big. It doesn't just keep you warm in the winter because it reflects your body heat back at you, but it keeps you cool in the summer because it reflects the sun and the other heat back out. For example, keeping one of these in your car kit, you can open it up, stick one end under your wiper blades, pull it over the roof of your car, and chances are you're not going to need to run that AC very much because it's going to reflect most of that heat back out. So if you're stranded on the freeway, this can be a godsend for you so you're not wasting all your gas. If you don't want to do that, or if you can't find them, or you just prefer not to do it, you can use other blankets. I would say something thin but warm, like a fleece blanket. Those fleece throws, you see, they're pretty big and they're pretty cheap. Just remember, whatever you get, you're going to have to be able to move around. So bigger is not usually better, necessarily. Toilet paper and plastic bags. And when I say plastic bags, I mean so you can clean up after you do what you need to do every so often. Everybody does it. You don't want to be digging a pit in the dirt, because if you have broken water lines in the ground and you're digging a pit in the dirt and what you're putting in that dirt and then covering up seeps down into those broken water lines, well, now you've just contaminated the entire system beyond what the dirt and other things would do. And if you were able to get a source of drinking water, maybe the broken water line bubbles up and you got a big puddle of water. That's great. Scoop some up, put some bleach in it. Not if people have been digging toilets, okay? So you want to have toilet paper and bags. And when I say bags, you can use the produce bags when you bring the apples and the bananas and the onions home from the grocery store. You can use the bags that newspapers come in if you get your newspaper delivered to your house every day. Anything like that. If you really want to, just get a box of Ziploc bags. Those work too. Let's see. If you have pets, make sure you account for them too, and I'll talk about that more in a bit as well. Pet food, extra water for your pets. If you have a dog, you want to have a leash and a harness, not just their collar, because after a disaster, your pets are going to be a lot more scared. Like I said, I'll get more into that later. If you have a bird or a cat, you're going to want to have an appropriate container, cage, a carrier, something like that for them. Waterless hand sanitizer, and I don't have any with me, unfortunately, but like Purell or those other gel hand sanitizers, a little alcohol, you just rub it on, your hands are germ-free. That stuff's great. When you don't have running water, you still want to be able to clean your hands. Paper plates, plastic cups, plastic utensils, garbage bags, because after eating all this canned food, you got to have some place to put it. Yeah, there we go. Hand sanitizer. Thank you. And again, the comfort items, the toys, the stuffed animals, the books, the games, something to keep you occupied, to keep the kids occupied. You also need to have something to put it all together. Those big, heavy plastic storage totes, as long as it's shock-proof or shock-resistant and waterproof. That's what you're looking for. If you've got a duffel bag and you live on a ground floor apartment and we happen to get a nasty flash flood, your kit's ruined. Okay, you need to have something that's not just shockproof for an earthquake, but also waterproof. If there's a nasty storm, we all know how the wind gets up here, tree branch falls off, takes out the front wall of your house, and now all the rain's coming in, again, your duffel bag's not going to do the trick. You need to have something that can resist the water, too. If you have a large family, you might want to get several smaller totes versus one large tote, make it easier to manage. And then if there's anything else you decide that you want or need or can afford, things like a generator or one of those 55-gallon water drums that you can just fill up, treat with some bleach, and you've got a big source of water right there to keep on hand. If you want a camp stove and some fuel so you can heat up your canned foods, whatever it may be that you want. And a lot of people forget this. They see all these disaster checklists. In fact, the third page is just a one-page checklist if you want to just take it with you to the store whenever you go buy your stuff. But a lot of people forget to put some cash away. It's $5, $10 a month. It doesn't seem like a lot. It will add up. Over a year, that's $60 to $120 more than you would otherwise have. Small bills are best, like ones, maybe fives, because after something happens and the power's out, nobody's going to be able to make change. They're all electronic registers. And especially if you get one of those people that can't quite figure out, okay, $13.62 and they gave me a 20, so I owe them, oh crap, how much do I owe them? So small bills, maybe even some change, like a roll of quarters, a roll of nickels or dimes, something like that. So does anybody have any questions about the disaster kit? Lindy? Excellent idea. Yeah. For those who couldn't hear, she was saying she keeps her disaster kit in a large roll-away trash can that you can close the lid. That's a great idea, especially if you have a large family. I'm not saying take the one you get from Waste Management and just keep it for yourself and say, oh, I lost it or someone stole it. No, don't do that. Go buy your own, okay? Because otherwise you're stealing, and that's bad. But something like that. And if you're really concerned about these or something, you can easily install a hasp and a padlock. Okay? So just some things to keep in mind with that. And now, your family plan. You've got your kit, okay? But what are you going to do? First, you need to designate a meeting place. Okay, this is where we're going to meet. If something happens, we're going to go here. It could be the cul-de-sac at the end of the street. It could be under the tree in front of so-and-so's house. It could be at the corner of X and Y. Designate a meeting place. Make sure everybody in your household knows that that's where you're going to meet. You might have little Johnny over at little Matthew's house. You might be grocery shopping. Your spouse might be coming home from work. Your other kid might be home alone. Everybody could be separated, so have a meeting place. Have an out-of-state contact. Okay, when something happens, like, for example, an earthquake, phone lines are going to be jammed. Local phone lines are always the first thing to go down, and that's assuming that they're even still standing and technically operational. They're going to be jammed. If you have an out-of-state contact, long-distance phone calls travel on a different set of lines. You're much more likely to get through. Best of all, text message. Whole different system altogether, and it only takes a little tiny space on the line. So if you can't get through locally and you can't get through to your out-of-state contact by a phone call, send a text message. At least to somebody. Even if you can only get it to somebody that's a little ways, like maybe an hour away, maybe the line's there. They can get through to your out-of-state contact. Know each other's schedules. Okay, let's think about this one for a moment. You know, let's say, for example, you know your husband goes to work and your kids go to school and they're usually home at this time. But do you know which way they go? Do you know what their usual stops are along the way? I'm not talking about things like stopping at the gas station, quick run to the liquor store, the grocery store, got to go to the doctor for a doctor's appointment. I'm talking about your general day-to-day schedule. You'll leave for school at this time, you usually take this road. You come back at this time, you usually take this road. You've got soccer practice here, you've got church group there. These times, whatever your regular schedule is. It seems a little extreme for a lot of people, you know, if you don't want to do it or if you're not comfortable with it or if it's too much to remember. But you know what? You can write it down. What this will do is not so much for your personal benefit as a family member to know where your relative is at, but for emergency personnel. It's been a day. Everybody's at the meeting place except one person. Well, you know who that person is. You know what time this happened. Well, where were they likely to be at that time? It gives emergency personnel, when they finally get to you, a good starting point for where to look for this person. So it's just something to keep in mind. And I'm not saying that by any means emergency personnel are going to be able to say, oh, I'm going to go look for this person right now. But if this person turns up, or if somebody says, hey, is anybody missing a white male in their 40s? Well, hey, my husband's a white male in his 40s, for example. Hey, you know, this family told me they're missing a white male in his 40s. Does he look like this? Is he found around this place? Maybe that's him. Maybe he got knocked unconscious. Maybe he was in a car crash. Maybe a building collapsed and he's trapped inside. Who knows? So it's a good idea to have it as a just in case. Multiple copies of important documents. How many of you have a fire safe, little portable fire safe in your house? What do you keep in it?
My bedroom closet.
Your bedroom closet. What do you keep in yours?
Passport, birth certificates.
Okay, passport, birth certificates. Anybody keep their insurance policies in there? Okay, everybody should be keeping a copy of your insurance policy in there, along with any video or pictures of specific items that you might have. Anybody keep their social security cards in there? Should be doing that too. Copies of your driver's license and your credit cards. Extra cash. Spare keys to your car and your house. These are the sorts of things that you're going to want. If you have immigration paperwork, for example, my dad immigrated from Canada when he was a kid, so he has his naturalization card. So these are things that you need to have. Marriage licenses, death certificates, stock certificates even, any important paperwork. You can either put it in a portable fire safe in your house so you can grab and go, or you can stick it in a bank safe deposit box, but have it there. Have all your originals in one place close to you. But you need to have at least two backups. One outside of your house, but local, because a disaster might only affect you. Your house might burn down. And if your house burns down and you can't get in to get to your portable fire safe, most of them have between a 45-minute to a 2-hour rating. If it takes an hour and a half for your house to burn down and your fire safe only has a 1-hour rating, well, you might not be able to get your stuff back from it. But if you have an extra copy at a trusted neighbor's house, a friend's house, a local relative, a bank safe deposit box, you still have a copy of all this stuff, your insurance policies, your car keys, some extra cash, etc. And then you want to keep a set out of state, out of the area, technically, but best place is with your out-of-state contact. I mean, that's the person you're going to be contacting to let everybody know where you're at and that you're okay anyway, so why not have that person also keep your stuff so there's one point of contact for everything. You don't have to remember, okay, I'm calling Aunt Susie to let her know I'm okay, and I'm calling Uncle Jim to get my stuff, or is it the other way around? Because after a disaster, we're all going to be flustered. We're all going to be freaked out. So just have one point of contact, one thing to remember, makes it easier for yourself. practice your plan with your family on a regular basis. How many of you are familiar with drop, cover, and hold? Okay. How many have heard of triangle of life? Okay. I'm going to touch on that in just a second here, but drop, cover, and hold. Fire escape plan. You know, if you need to get out of your house because a fire starts in a bedroom or in a bathroom or in the kitchen. Anything like that, you need to practice. You need to practice, okay, we're going to go all over the neighborhood. Okay, earthquake starting now. Okay, we're going to practice. We're going to go to this tree or this cul-de-sac or this wherever. Just practice once a month, twice a month, once every couple months, whatever works for your family, but make sure you practice it. Any special skills that you need to refresh on, first aid and CPR, using a fire extinguisher, make sure you practice them regularly too. And this falls into family plan because all responsible members and capable members of your family should be doing this as well. Teenagers can use a fire extinguisher and perform CPR. Little kids, believe it or not, they can help keep track of stuff. If they can write stuff down so you know, okay, I called this person. Okay, we got this person, this person, this person. This one I know is over here and she's safe, but this one we're still missing. Whatever it is, you can practice it. So, okay, drop, cover, and hold. Before I get into utilities here, drop, cover, and hold. It's really simple. Earthquake starts. Oh no, it's shaking. So what do? You drop. You get under some cover and you hold on. Now, something like this, not a good idea. Something like those chairs that you're sitting on, also not a good idea. Even though they're bolted down, they're not going to walk around while the ground's shaking. They're not a good idea. I mean, you can see right next to you, they fold up. So if you get underneath it, if you're not actually in the chair and you get underneath it, well, it's going to fold up, and anything that falls down, like these lights, for example, it's just going to go right through that chair and on your head. Bad news. So in a place, yeah, it's not going. In a place like this, it's very difficult to drop, cover, and hold. There are a couple things, like we could get under these tables here or this table here. Chances are, for most of us, by the time we got up out of our chair, out of the aisle, over to the table, it takes too long. So you do what you can. You just drop in the middle, you hold on, and you cover the best you can. Take your hands, you interlock them like this, you put them behind your head, at the base of your head, covering the base of your head and your neck so you can protect your brainstem and your spinal cord right there, because that part controls your breathing, your heart rate, all those basic functions of life. And you do the best you can. Now, if you do get under a table, like say, for example, I mean, you're in the front row, for example. You could get under this table. So you get under, you drop, you cover, but you hold on, too, so that the table, you walk with the table instead of the table walking away from you. So, anybody have any questions about drop, cover, and hold? Okay. Triangle of life is something, it's not terribly new, but it is starting to gain some momentum, I guess you could say. I'm going to tell you right now, bad idea. The idea with the triangle of life is that as buildings collapse and ceilings and roofs fall down, there becomes this triangle. You've got the wall here, ceiling collapses, makes this triangle where the wall meets the floor, and you've got this space that you can, if you can get to that space, you're going to be okay. The time it's going to take you to think about where you are and where the nearest wall is too long, for one. Another part of Triangle of Life uses the Loma Prieta earthquake as an example, when the Oakland Bridge collapsed. If the people had gotten out of their cars and gotten down between them on the freeway, you know, it would have hit the cars and crushed them, but they would have been in that dead space. Those cars are going to move just as much as any desk, table, chair, anything else, and they're probably going to get crushed by the car and the stuff coming down from the freeway above. Triangle of Life is dangerous, okay? People die because of it, so don't. Please, if the only thing you take away from this is drop, cover, and hold and not triangle of life, that makes me happy, okay? So, your utilities. Most of us have circuit breakers. Go back. Most of us have circuit breakers. This is what this would be like an apartment circuit breaker, not too many circuits on it. You've got a main breaker. It usually has the double switch, so to speak. And most of your individual circuits are going to be on a single switch. Sometimes the kitchen will be a double, sometimes the air conditioner will be a double. But what you do is you flip off when Disaster strikes, say it's an earthquake, for example. I keep using earthquake because that's the most common thing here. Earthquake hits, shaking stops, okay, we're all right, okay. Go outside or to your garage or wherever your breaker panel is. Flip off all the individual circuits first and then the main breaker. Now later on, when okay, things are starting to get back to normal, they're telling us we can turn the power back on now. Start with the main power, you just do it in reverse, the main power first and then each individual circuit. Because if you do all the individual circuits and then flip on the main power and something blows, you're not going to know which circuit was doing it. So this way you can kind of isolate it and you'll know what's where if there's any damage. Go to the next one. Now some of us may still have homes that are old enough to have fuse boxes. These are pretty rare out here, but you may still see them. In this case, you usually have all the individual fuses, those are those circle things, and there's a main throw switch. I'm not going to get into fuse boxes too much. It's in here. If you have one, that's what it's going to look like, just to let you know. Now your gas shut off. Okay, now this is where your crescent wrench or your 4-in-1 tool or whatever you've got is going to come in handy. And in fact, if you want, what you do is this weekend, go out to your gas meter, take a crescent wrench with you, and just tape it to the wall right behind your gas meter so you know where it's going to be. Or tape it to the pipe or something. Stick it in the ground. That way you've already got it right there. Maybe your stuff falls on your kit and you can't get to your kit. Well, you can still go shut off your gas if you need to. Now, your valve might look like one of two things. It might have that little round flange sticking off the top of it. It might not, like the little inset. What you're going to do is you're not going to shut your gas off automatically. You want to pay attention to what you're hearing, smelling, and seeing first. If you have no leak and you shut off your gas, well, you can't just turn it back on by yourself. You have to get a technician out there. It's going to be weeks. So if you've got no leak, you're now going weeks without gas unnecessarily, which means no stove to cook, no heat for your house if it's the middle of winter, nothing like that. What you do, and it's also in here, if you look at this right here on the utilities page, when the valve is going the same direction as the pole, your gas is on. To shut it off, you just turn it so it's perpendicular. It closes it off. Basically, it's like a little valve that's inside with a little hole that goes through it, and when you turn it, it turns that the hole goes sideways to the pipe, it fits tight, and now the gas can't get through. What you should do, and I would say at least once a year, just to make sure, probably more like once every 6 months, is you go out and you test it. You put your wrench on there, or if you get the crescent wrench, you put it on there, but you only turn it a little bit. You just want to make sure that it's turning freeway. Don't turn it all the way to actually turn it off, because now you got to call the gas company out for a service call to turn it back on. They're probably going to charge you a pretty penny for it. But just turn it a little bit, and then when you're done, make sure you turn it back to fully open. That way you can check and see, make sure it's not rusted shut, stuck shut because of weather, water, dirt, or anything. If it is stuck, you can call the gas company. They will come, take a look at it, and repair it if necessary. Sometimes those repair calls are free. So it's just something to keep in mind. Water shutoff. Now there are two main water shutoffs. One is generally inside the house. If you live in an apartment, it might not be inside your apartment. Ask your manager where your water shutoff is for your unit or for your building if it's a common shutoff. But typically it looks like that. It looks like a hose spigot. And you just make sure once you identify it that you mark it. This one has a tag. It says cold water shutoff. Mark it so that you can find it all the time. It's usually going to be either in the garage, in a closet, in the laundry room. It might be outside at a spigot, but you're going to, once you identify it, you mark it, and then you know, and you just turn it just like you would for a hose spigot. You turn it one way to tighten it off, another way to open it up. What you should do is, when an earthquake strikes, or any other disaster like that that could potentially have damaged the water pipes, shut your water off. It'll do two things. One, you still have water in the pipes in your home that you can use. You're not going to have a lot of pressure, so you're not going to get a whole lot out, but you'll have some water. You'll have some tap water. And two, if the water mains are damaged, and maybe you've got sewage or chemicals or some other stuff leaking into it, it's going to keep that stuff from coming up into the water supply that's in your home. So you want to shut it off to keep gravity from sucking it out of your house and to keep bad stuff from coming in if it gets contaminated. Now, the other place that you might have a water shut-off valve is at the street. For those of you that live in single-family homes, in your meter box, If you have the other one, use it. If you don't, you can do this. Make sure you get the house side, not the supply side. If you're not sure where your shutoff is or which one's supply versus house, you can call the water company. You can ask them to come out and have them help you find it so you can identify it and know where it is. If you have propane, basically you go out to your propane tank. The nozzle looks a lot like a water shutoff. You turn it one way to tighten it off. You turn it the other way to open it up. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention with gas. The see, smell, hear. If you hear a hissing sound anywhere in your house, listen closely. Go room by room. Listen for hissing in the walls, from the vents. If you smell gas, that's a dead giveaway right there. And if you can't see, or if you can't hear or smell anything, go check your meter. If the dials are spinning rapidly, you probably have a leak somewhere that you just can't detect yet. It might be building up in the wall or underground or wherever it may be. So if you hear it, you smell it, or you see those dials spinning rapidly, that's when you shut off your gas, and only then. Don't do it if you don't have to. Any questions about utilities? Yes, sir.
Now, why do you have to have the gas company come through the gas back on?
The reason for that is because gas is highly volatile. It's very flammable. It's dangerous. If there's even a single static spark in the area when you turn that gas back on, it's going to cause some problems. Not just that, but your pilot lights have to be lit properly. And if you turn the gas back on, but you're not ready to light those pilot lights right then, you're going to get a buildup of gas inside your home. So that's why, because they have the... It seems like it, but it's the danger once it's on, unless you have the equipment and the skills and the personnel in place to actually do it properly and do it quickly. Because if you wait too long, if you go out to turn on your gas and then you go back into the garage to light your pilot light, that minute or so is enough sometimes to build up enough gas to be very bad. So, any other questions? Okay. Fire extinguishers. Okay. Who here has heard of PASS? Okay, most of you it looks like. I'm not going to actually do it because it does have the little plastic thing on here, but it's pretty basic. You pull the pin. If you've got the little plastic thing on here, you might have to pull pretty hard, so just give it a good yank. It should pop right off. You aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. Don't just stand here like this, okay, I got my fire extinguisher, because now it's going to pour all over your feet, and it's not going to do you any good. So if you have one of these hose nozzles, hold it and aim it at the base of the fire. Don't aim it up in the flames. Aim it at what's actually burning. Squeeze the handle to actually let the stuff start coming out, and then you sweep back and forth until the fire's completely out. And how you're going to sweep depends on what kind of fire you've got. If you've got a flat fire on the ground, you're going to kind of go forwards and backwards, side to side. If you've got curtains that are burning, you might be going up and down. So some things to think about there. Like I said, get the biggest one you can reasonably afford and manage. Yes?
What I do know, some of the ABC ones, they're one use. Typically they come from chain stores, Home Depot, Lowe's. Make sure you guys read them, because sometimes you get nervous, you squirt it, but if you don't continue to spray, it stops, and it's over.
Yeah.
So,
That's quite all right. That's a good point. For those who didn't hear, if you get one of those, some of those fire extinguishers that are one use, and once you let go of that handle, it stops and you can't start it again, make sure you know your fire extinguisher. That's why it's important to practice with it. I'm not saying actually discharge it when you're practicing. In fact, you shouldn't do that, because now you have to get a fire extinguisher technician to recharge it for you. But at least you're familiar with it, and you get that memory in your head. Squeeze and hold, instead of just squeeze and freak out. If you do have an opportunity to actually practice using an extinguisher and actually squeeze it, by all means, I strongly suggest you take it. For those of you who may have taken CERT training, you've probably had actual experience with the fire extinguisher. It's great stuff. Now, I talked about mitigating your risk. Okay, this is going to be stuff inside your house. These are some examples of some products you can use. The museum putty to hold your pictures. You can use it to hold pictures onto the wall. Just put it at the bottom corners to hold stuff onto the shelves. The furniture and electronics and appliance straps. You can use L brackets like that to attach your tall furniture to the walls, or you can use earthquake straps. Drawer latches, like you see usually in the infant and toddler section at the discount stores or the Babies R Us and places like that. That way, your stuff's not going to fall all over the place. And with the kitchens especially, if you keep your knives in a drawer, as you probably should, because if you keep your knives in a block and an earthquake hits, who knows where those knives are going to go. If you have them in a drawer with a latch on it, at least when that drawer flies open from the shaking, you're not going to have knives try to attack you from across the kitchen. Now, water heaters. Okay, water heaters can be a good source of drinking water in an emergency if you run out of other water, if you take care of it properly. There's a valve at the bottom. You just attach a hose to it. Every 6 months, drain your water heater completely. That way you don't have rust and sediment from the water mains or anything else gathering in the bottom of your tank. If you do that every 6 months, then if disaster happens, you've got some good drinking water there. You should also get, if you see those metal bands that go across it there, earthquake straps. You can get them for between $10 and $20 a kit. They come with all the equipment you need. If your water heater is far enough away from the wall, you might need to buy a couple pieces of 2x4 as well. Depending on what your wall construction is like, you may need to write to the company and they'll send you the proper nuts and bolts, usually for free, depending on if you've got wood, brick, cement, metal, whatever your studs or wall construction might be. You want to have, this isn't quite the best example, it's the best one I could find though. The top strap should go 1/3 of the way from the top of the tank. The bottom strap should be 1/3 of the way up from the bottom of the tank, but at least 4 inches, so roughly that far above the controls. If you have a shorter tank and 4 inches above the controls puts that bottom strap at halfway up, so be it. But you don't want to be risking damaging those controls because that's where your gas control and your little light ignition to, if you have an electronic pilot for your water heater, things like that, your thermostat. The reason for that is if you just put one around the middle and you get a nasty earthquake, well, there's a good chance that that thing is going to try and fold in half. You want to make sure too, go home, look at your water heaters tonight or this weekend. If you have metal straps but they have holes running down the middle, go buy an earthquake strap kit for your water heater. Those pieces of metal with the holes running down the middle, that's called plumber's tape, and it is no good in an earthquake. It will not hold your water heater. If your water heater topples, you got 2 things. 1, you can't use it for drinking water because it's all going to spill out. 2, it might just rupture the gas line that runs into it. And if you didn't shut off your gas because you didn't need to, but now an aftershock hits and your water heater pulls that gas line open, well, now you got a big problem. So that's the deal with that. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff right now. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, what she's saying, for those who couldn't hear, is she just renewed her homeowners insurance, and now they're requiring that you have your water heater properly secured with the strap so they won't write the policy. You're going to start to find that more and more in earthquake areas. In Lancaster and in most of Palmdale, believe it or not, we are not in a designated earthquake zone. I know it sounds strange because San Andreas is right there, but believe it or not, we are not in a designated earthquake zone. So if you have a mortgage or you've owned your house, it's paid off, and now you want to get new homeowners insurance, you don't have to get an earthquake policy. When you live in an earthquake zone, typically they mandate it. But here, you don't have to. But because it is a hazard, unique to California pretty much, and pretty much the Southwest, it is something you're going to start to see more and more. Certain requirements for mobile homes. They're going to say, is it properly tied down? Is it fully skirted? Is it this, that, and the other? For water heaters, are they properly strapped and secured? Do you have, some might even require that you have one of those earthquake safety shutoffs on your gas meter. Those, because you shouldn't be shutting off your gas unnecessarily, I'm personally am not a big fan of those, but if that's something that you're more comfortable with, then go ahead and do it. Just remember you're going to have to call the gas company later on when you find out it's okay to turn your gas back on. Animals. Like I said, make sure that you plan for your animals as well, okay? dog food, cat food, extra water, leash and harness, a cat carrier, a blanket to put over the bird cage, whatever it may be. If you've got a snake, you might want to have a pillowcase. Even for a cat, you might want to have a pillowcase. They actually sell these things called evac sacks. It's basically a fancy pillowcase. You take a pillowcase, you turn it inside out, you put your arms inside of it, you go up, you grab your cat, and you flip the thing inside out. That way the cat's not trying to scratch and claw you while they're all freaked out because the earth just moved and that's not supposed to happen. Or they smell smoke and it's strong and they can't figure out where it's from and that's not supposed to happen. Pets get scared. They are going to want to run. They're going to want to fight. It's that fight or flight thing. They don't know what's going on, so they're going to react as if it was a major threat because to them, naturally, it is a major threat. Like I said, a harness for your dog, not just a collar. Make sure you have a harness because in that scared fight or flight stage, they're probably going to wriggle out of their collar. My dogs wriggle out of their collars on a regular basis no matter how tight I put them, and I'm afraid I'm going to choke them. So they have harnesses anyway. Not all dogs do. So make sure you have one. Again, bags for waste disposal. Don't just do the, you see them at the dog park and things like that because it's the polite thing to do, although half the people don't use them anyway. But after an earthquake, it's extra important because, again, if that water main's broken, why add to the possibility of contamination? For if you have cats, a foil roasting pan works great as a disposable litter pan. And make sure you keep at least a week's worth of litter in there. If you've got gerbils or birds, squirrels, anything that's got like the bedding or anything in the bottom of their cage or terrarium, have extra of that on hand. Recent photos of each of your pets in case you get separated. If they run off, maybe they're in the backyard, Fido's in the backyard when earthquake hits and Fido freaks out and Fido busts out the front gate that just flew open because the lock was old or it wasn't locked or whatever. If you have a recent photo, you can go to the pound a couple days later and say, have you seen my dog? Because you might find that there are a lot of Fidos that look an awful lot alike, especially if the same litter still lives locally. So you've got that recent photo. Make sure your immunization and licenses for your pets are up to date. Make sure they've got current ID tags on them. If you move, you change cell phones, whatever the case may be, get a new tag with the current number. Make sure you check that. If your pets have medical problems, some dogs and cats have diabetes, things like that, make sure you've got copies of their medical records too, not just yours and your kids and your parents, but your pets. Because an average dog can eat average dog food. A dog that's got diabetes might not be able to eat that stuff. So it's things to keep in mind. Transportation. Okay, it talks about the evac sack thing, the inside-out pillowcase right here under transportation. Dogs, you might want to keep a muzzle in your kit because they might be snappish. Even to people that they're well familiar with and they've grown up with their entire life, they might try to bite. So if you have birds, you put a blanket over the cage. If you have snakes, you put them in a pillowcase. Things like that. Horses are a little trickier. It talks about horses in here. What I would strongly suggest, especially if you live up in the foothills where it's a little more fire prone, like the Crown Fire that came up to Quartz Hill just last year. If you've got horses, I would strongly suggest that you see if the local fire station is willing to send a crew out just to acquaint your horses with the smell of smoke. Have them wear their gear. The smoke is going to be on it. They can smell it and get used to the smell so that when it actually happens and it's more of it, they're not as freaked out. It's something they've experienced before, and they've experienced it in a calm, controlled environment. Try to socialize your pets with strangers, Invite the neighbors over. Take your dog to the dog park, things like that. Oh. So, any questions about animals? Yes?
Big suggestion, microchip your pets.
Yes, excellent. Microchipping. It's a great idea, and you're right, I did neglect to bring that up. Microchipping. Dogs, I will tell you, the shelter right out here on 50th West and I, they will microchip your dog for free. If you pay $6, you get nationwide registration. It is a great idea. Cats, they don't do for free right now because the grant that they got does not allow for that much money because there are tons of cats. But I would microchip all your pets. your birds, or get the little leg band for your birds. Your rodents like the guinea pigs and the gerbils.
You can microchip anything with fur.
There you go, anything with fur.
Rats, mice, gerbils, hamsters, guinea pigs, all 9 yards. And every veterinary hospital has a universal scanner. Animal control also has a universal scanner. Home Again, you can post a picture on the Home Again website, same with Avid, so they would have all your pet information. You can also fax your veterinary records to Home Again and to Avid. They would put it with your pet's information.
Yeah, it's definitely a great resource. And if you keep your information current, then even if the tag does come off because they run out and they get snagged on a bush, they've got the microchip with your contact info in there. Just make sure that you update your registration just like you would the tag itself. If emergency personnel recommend that you stay inside your house, do so, especially if you have pets. Because like I said, they're going to be scared. The more familiar you can keep things for them, the better. So if they say stay home, then do it. Stay home. Any other questions about pets? Okay. Now there's some information here about, continue and save later. There's some information here about children, disabled, elderly. Basically, it's more of that hazard mitigation and disaster kit type stuff. We touched on it earlier. If you have young children, if you have disabled people in your home, or you've got your elderly parents living with you or anything like that, if you're a caretaker for somebody, definitely please make sure you read through this. It talks about having extra canes or walkers, having the pathways clear enough for wheelchairs and no obstructions, all those sorts of things. Now, before I get to shelter in place, which is the, I believe, third to last page here, I want to talk about immediate response kits. Has anybody heard of an immediate response kit? You have. Anybody else? Okay. An immediate response kit is basically just that. Something happens. Immediately, there are certain items that you really need to have. If it's 2 a.m. and an earthquake hits, you roll out of bed, you're in your nightgown and slippers if you're lucky, maybe socks, maybe nothing. Well, with an emergency response kit, you've got gloves to protect your hands. You've got boots or sneakers or some kind of sturdy shoes to protect your feet from broken glass, fallen debris, anything like that. You've got a hard hat, like I've got my hard hat over there for my CERT kit. For kids, a bike helmet, or even for you if you have a bike helmet. And bike helmet will work, okay? Just something to protect yourself until you can get to a safe place or determine that where you're at is safe. You just keep it in a little box right under your bed, next to your bed, whatever, as long as it's right there. Now, if you're out and about, if something happens during the day, that's different. But chances are you're going to be wearing good shoes, and you're going to be more in a place where you can get to certain things. In the middle of the night when you're rubbing the sleep out of your eyes, you're going to need something because you're not going to know where anything is. You're not going to think right off, oh, I just need to go here, here, and here. This way it's right there. Any questions about that? Okay. Shelter in place. Now, shelter in place is kind of the other side of disaster preparedness. When we think of disaster preparedness, we usually think long-term, earthquake, major fire, major flood, hurricane, tornado, the cleanup, the aftermath. Sometimes it's short-lived. A chemical spill, a radiological accident, a bomb that goes off. It might just be that the fire's not near you, but the winds are so strong that all the smoke is blowing your way and you can't see very far outside because it's just that bad. It's something that's temporary, and it's better for you to just hunker down and stay where you are than to try and go anywhere. So with shelter in place, basically what you do is you look in your house, you designate a room for a master bedroom with an attached bathroom, like a little master suite. That's ideal. If you don't have that, you do what you can. You get something that's got access to water, something that's got enough room for you and everyone in your household to sit comfortably for several hours, a lamp, a TV or a radio or a computer so you can keep in current on what's going on, if it's okay to come out, etc. As few windows and doors as possible is best. Upstairs is better than downstairs if you have a 2-story house, because a lot of things that are going to be contaminating the air are heavier than air. So you need to look around the room. You need to identify every door, every window, every switch plate, whether it's a light switch, an electrical outlet, a cable outlet, a phone outlet. Everything that's got a potential opening, you have to identify it and you have to measure it. Then you go to the hardware store, you get some plastic sheeting between 2 and 4 millimeter thick. And they call it 2 mil or 4 mil. Get some plastic sheeting. You get enough to cover all that with some overhang. You get some duct tape or something like that, and you measure it all out. You cut it to size for that particular thing. Maybe it's your door. And once you've got it cut to size with some overhang so you can tape it on tight, you mark it with a marker. Okay, master bedroom door, north window, electrical outlet, whatever the case may be. That way, if something happens, you go in your house, you shut and lock every door and window as tightly as you can, working your way back to that safe room. You shut and lock that safe room door and windows, and you get your sheeting out and your tape, and you start putting it up. And because it's labeled, you already know what goes where. Instead of trying to hold it up, okay, that's not the right one, you're wasting valuable time. Keep some towels on hand so you can shove them under the crack in the bottom of the door. If you have hardwood floors or tile floors or linoleum, even better, because you can tape the sheeting to the floor and seal it off that way. Pretty much all the instructions are in here. It's pretty basic. You can also find them online at ready.gov. The idea is you're sealed, but you can still tape around, like you keep your lamp plugged in, you keep your TV or your computer or your radio plugged in, keep the cable plugged in, you just tape around it to seal it off from where the cord's coming out of the wall. And that way you can keep your stuff on so you can keep in contact. Now, when they tell you, okay, it's safe to come out now, the chemical spill is dissipated, the bomb blast is cleared, whatever it may be, now you go through, you take down all your sheeting, you open up all your doors and your windows, and you let your house air out. Because that way anything that might have gotten in can then air out. You turn on your ventilation system so anything that got into your ventilation can be cycled through and out. So does anybody have any questions about that? There's a lot more detail in here, but those are the basics about shelter in place. Okay. Now, some things to keep in mind too, if you're say you're at the grocery store, you go as far back, as far away from the doors and windows as possible. You do what you can. You know, you're not always going to be at home when something like this happens. If you're at Winco, Walmart, Costco, you do what you can. You get as far away from all the windows and doors as possible. If you have to, or if you want to, breathe through your shirt, okay? That way at least the moisture in your breath will dampen your shirt, which will help catch some stuff as it starts to come in, so it's stopping at your shirt instead of going through. It's not foolproof, it's not fail-safe, but it's a little added help. Say there's a nearby explosion, make sure you check your utilities before you lock yourself inside, because it does no good to lock yourself inside with a gas leak, okay? So if there's an explosion of any kind nearby, or if there's any potential for damage to your house from whatever reason you need to shelter in place, just make sure you check that as you're going inside. Just a couple more things really quickly from this booklet, Planning for the Aftermath. Everybody thinks about what to do if. They don't think about what to do after. You need to keep in mind that you're still going to need a place to live. You're going to need some kind of shelter. Supplies are going to run out fast, and emergency aid is going to run out just as fast too. So you're going to need to have some way to be able to purchase more supplies. So have cash on hand. If you run out of cash, are you going to be able to get employment? Are you going to be able to get to and from your current job? If not, are you going to get paid time off, or are they going to let you go after a certain time because you can't get there? There's nothing saying they have to keep you hired just because you can't get there because the road's damaged. Okay, so it's something to think about. You need to think about, like I said, employment, money. This is part of why it's so important to keep money. You know, set aside what you can every paycheck. $20 a paycheck in a savings account with some interest. It might only be a few pennies a year, but hey, it's a few pennies more and you've got some money. Don't forget about your health either, both physical and psychological. If you take a multivitamin every day, keep some in your disaster kit too so that you can continue to do that. Especially when you're living off canned and boxed goods, chances are the nutrition you're going to get's not ideal, but at least that way you've got it. Even if you don't take a multivitamin every day, it's a good idea to keep that in your kit. Major health concerns. If you have high blood pressure, you need to make sure you limit your stress afterwards. If you're diabetic, make sure you're going to have access to insulin and other supplies beyond what you're able to keep in your kit, because most people, as far as I know, the insulin needs to be kept in the fridge, if I'm not mistaken. So it's something that you need to keep in mind. If you run out of extra before pharmacies are back up and running and open, what are you going to do? What are your plans? Do you have any contingencies in place? Are you able to go somewhere out of state or out of the area, or maybe there is a pharmacy that's open and you can get some? Are they going to be able to access your medical records? Maybe you should keep a copy of that with your emergency kit and with your important documents. And don't forget to take a break. You're running around, you're freaking out. Do I have enough of this? Where can I get more of that? What are we going to do for this other? Take a break. Take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you need. Just stop. Relax. Okay? Chill out. Because if you don't, the stress is going to be what's going to get you in the end. And afterwards, it's the post-disaster psychological trauma that usually has the longest lasting effect. Beyond any infrastructure damage, beyond any employment issues, it's the stress. The stress is what's going to get you in the end. So make sure you take some time now and again to just take a breather. Get a few extra minutes of sleep. Chill out. Just sit down and do nothing and think about nothing for 5 minutes, whatever it is. Just make sure you take care of yourself. Don't put yourself last, or you'll be no good in the end. And then this last page talks about some resources. I would suggest you familiarize yourself with some of these now. That way, when a disaster happens, you already have some idea of where you can go, who you can turn to. We're talking people like FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, Salvation Army, the American Red Cross, all these sorts of places. If you lose your job or you're unable to get to it and you don't qualify for unemployment insurance, there's something called disaster unemployment assistance that you might be able to get that's done by the Department of Labor. There are resources out there. Small Business Administration makes loans for both businesses and homeowners affected by disasters, not just business. Everybody thinks, oh, it's Small Business Administration, I can't get that, I don't know a business. They do it for houses too. So familiarize yourself with some of these. There's a wealth of resources online. Just take a look online, do a web search, disaster assistance. You'll find a ton of stuff. Familiarize yourself now. There is one website, in fact, it's called disasterassistance.gov. It's the first one on this sheet. All the federal agencies that provide any kind of disaster assistance, beauty of this website is it's one-stop shopping. You fill out one application, one time, and they say, out of all these, okay, you qualify for this, 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 that, and the other. Okay, you don't qualify for these three. You might for these. Let's do a little more research. And you only have to do one thing one time. In the case of a major regional disaster, they're actually going to come out and set up little booths here and there in the affected areas that you can do it in paper there, since you're not going to have internet access, most likely, because you might not have power, or the phone lines, for example, might be down, or the cable's going to be out. So, any questions about that stuff at this point? Yes?
I actually have a comment.
Okay.
We had the windstorm more recently, and over where I live, some of the power went out. Mine went out for like 10 seconds. But my neighbors who had put in, what do you call it, central heating air, their power was out. So of course they come to my house. I told them to take a coffee can, put a candle inside of it, and go hang out in the bathroom. That's what we're from Oklahoma. My parents told me to carry a coffee can with a candle. So if you run off the road, God forbid, it's snowing, if you have your car running and that snow backs up, you die. If you cut it off, have your candle, and we've done it because they made us, because my parents are like that. You put that candle in that coffee can, and if you can keep the stuff rolled up, you still keep enough heat where you find yourself sometimes, freezing.
Yeah. It's a great idea for short-term things like severe weather. What she was saying, for those who might not hear, and for those at home watching on TV or online, get a coffee can, like one of those little, I don't know, what are they, 5-pound coffee cans, and you put a candle in it, and you keep that in your kit. And that way you get yourself in a small enclosed space like a bathroom, or if you're stuck on the freeway, you can roll up all the windows and do it in your car instead of having to run your car and waste all your gas. Keep it in a small contained space, and this candle and coffee can will actually create some heat for you. So that is a good idea. Any other questions at this point? Okay. The city's emergency operation plan, this is one of the biggest questions that we get in public safety. If you go to the public safety website at cityoflancasterca.org, you go to Departments and Services and click on Public Safety. It brings you to our website. Okay? Now this page here is our emergency preparedness page. All of this information is right there in those links on the left, right under emergency preparedness. So if you need more copies, you lose this one, somebody else you know is interested and wants to know where to find it, well, there you go. Right there on that main Be Ready page, there's a link there. It says City of Lancaster Emergency Operations Plans. A couple links right above the video there. If you click on that, it opens up a PDF file. And it's actually the city's emergency operations plan. It's several pages long. It was just revised last year. The idea that the city has is our main goal is to first protect life and property. That's our main goal. We're not going to go knocking door to door. We're going to assist the other agencies in protecting life and property within the city as best as we can. If we need help, we will ask for it. But we're looking at the big picture. We simply don't have the ability as a city, being local, we don't have the ability to give personalized attention to each and every one of our roughly 150,000 residents. It would take us weeks to do that. And after a disaster, nobody has that long. Their kits are running out now. That's not to say that there's not going to be help. We're going to work with other agencies, but we're not going to come, okay, are you okay? Is your family okay? Okay, now we're going to go next door. Okay, are you okay? Do you need anything? Is there anything damaged? Then we're going to go next door. We just can't do it. But we do have some plans in place. We have our Emergency Operations Center, the EOC. So if it's an act of war, if a statewide disaster or a national state of disaster is declared, if there's a local disaster like an earthquake, a fire, a flood, a major weather incident, anything like that, we have some plans in place. Now, a lot of people ask, well, where are we supposed to go? If there's an earthquake and everything collapses, where do we go? We can't really say because we don't know. We don't know what's going to be available. Will the soccer center work? Maybe. But only if you can actually access it because the roads aren't all torn up. Will the fairgrounds work? Maybe, but only if all the buildings don't collapse and cause havoc. Will Lancaster City Park? Maybe, but remember you've got the freeway on one side, you've got a lot of trees, you've got some buildings, so we have to think about possibilities, which is what we've done, and then once something happens, then determine out of those possibilities where we're going to be able to use for aid drops, evacuation centers, whatever it may be. Point of distribution in the case of, say there's a nasty, like the swine flu outbreak and they were doing the drive-through at the fairgrounds or whatever and get your little nasal injection or whatever it was they were doing. If there's something like that where we need to do that, we need to see what's available at the time because there's no way to know in advance. So if you're interested in reading that, that is on our website, yes. We do have memorandums of understanding with all the county agencies like fire, sheriffs. We have memorandums of understanding with the county itself, with nearby Kern County, I believe some other places as well. I actually don't know what all the MOUs are. I'm sure there's an MOU with Palmdale. I don't know all the MOUs. I'm sure we're working with more than just county. So I really don't know exactly. It's not something that I'm privy to because that's a level that's much higher than I am, unfortunately. I know we have them in place, and they go from local to statewide to national.
What are your guys' settings as far as pets and
That's something I don't know, and again, it's going to be kind of depending on what goes on. The shelter does have limited resources. There's not a lot we're going to be able to do as far as specific attention just for pets. That's part of why being prepared for disaster is so critical, because you, your family, your pets, you need to be able to take care of yourself until something can be put in place. And what that something is, I don't know. I can't say right now. I honestly can't. Yes, sir.
Right. I came in just so you know, because first time this year I'm on the EEOC. I work with the California State Reserve, the National Guard. Mm-hmm. And in the next few weeks, we go et cetera. Works out of Texas and all these. It's major military, and so that's what I'm attached with, is the military side. But military would be the person who's going to be dealing with it is basically going to be Northern Command. And it's the military area of responsibility, AOR, and that includes specific sectors. We're in a sector which I believe is 9. What that means is we deal with a specific command unit that works with NORTHCOM, which could be in Texas and or depending upon situations in Colorado. So it's quite unique. It works well, and that's one reason I've come here. I've been trying to connect also with CERT, the lady that's involved with one of the captains of the CERT, something like that. And so I drop in once in a while. This is first this time to hear on what's going on, and then I go someplace else sometime.
Yeah.
But thanks for letting me talk.
Oh, not a problem. For those at home that weren't able to hear, he's basically saying that he works with California Reserves. It's kind of like, you said National Guard? National Guard. And he does basically disaster response, and they practice it, and they drill it all the time in different scenarios, different locations, and he's connected to the different agencies and the different possibilities, and they are constantly reviewing and getting updated information as to what's around, what could happen, all that kind of stuff, right? Am I correct? So, kind of piggybacking on that from what you said, if they have a MOU with, say, Los Angeles County, even if we don't directly have an MOU with them, because Los Angeles County does, and not only are we part of Los Angeles County, but we have an MOU with Los Angeles County, that becomes an indirect MOU that they can provide assistance as well. If Los Angeles County, if the need required exceeds the county's capability and they have to reach out with another mutual aid request.
For example, there's a problem in Lancaster that's really, really bad, as well as along you may consider this area of the high desert. You have to go through this 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 21, and directives, of course, from the federal government. And after that's reached, of course, the Office of the President responds and indicates whether it's going to be national. Once that's done, everything shifts to a different system. And everything is, most of what happens with regards to management is already directed. We just fall into fill out components of responsibility.
Well, the thing is, I just came down here from Pierce County, Washington, and I helped start Pierce County Animal Response Team there. When we worked with the Department of Emergency Management on an MOU. Okay, so when something happened, DEM didn't deal with the animals, we dealt with the animals.
Okay.
It was also put into law by President Bush in 2007 that every city, state, county, government period had to take care of the animals as well as the humans.
Okay. If that's the case, then we probably do have some kind of contingency plan. I just don't know what it is, honestly. She was saying, for those who couldn't hear, she just came down from Pierce County, Washington, and helped start, what'd you call it, the
Pierce County Animal Response Team.
Animal Response Team. Kind of like disaster response for animals and taking care of the animals.
Part of the, see that 15 ESS, okay, the emergency for the ESS? Okay, well, there are 15 of these, basically, dynamic control points, okay? Communications, transportation, all the way down through energy, like that. And one of those deals with maintenance, agreements across the states, et cetera, with what you were considering.
Yeah, that's the page that's in here that we already covered. Why?
Based on being prepared for it, it's not really based on during or after it.
Yeah,
As far as what you have locally.
yeah, it's very difficult to say because we don't know. We don't know what's going to be available, what's going to be usable, what we're going to be able to do. You know, are we going to be able to get help from other agencies? Well, if in the case, say it's an active war, we might be one of the least hit, and we might have exhausted our possibilities, but if we reach out for mutual aid, well, all of our mutual aid agreements are overwhelmed just dealing with themselves, and so forth, and it becomes a ripple effect. That's why we can't really say what we as a city are specifically going to do after the fact.
That's why I brought up, why are you working on facilities, why don't you work with
Yeah, we're going to get to some of that in just a second here with CERT and whatnot. Any other questions about the emergency operations plan before we keep going? Okay. Now, I've got a link open here up at the top for Antelope Valley CERT. For those of you who don't know, CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. Antelope Valley CERT is a regional CERT call-out team. Well, it's actually technically a collection of 6 or 7 call-out teams throughout the Antelope Valley. And we're regionalized. Okay, if you're on a CERT call-out team up here, you can be mobilized for local disasters. You can be mobilized for assistance, say, with the station fire. A couple of our CERT teams were mobilized for help with the station fire, with evacuations and traffic control. Excuse me. If there's a disaster, say there's a major earthquake and it affects LA, but we're pretty much unaffected, our CERT call-out teams may be activated to go assist down in LA. So CERT it started by LAPD back in, I think, 1985, and when Whittier Narrows earthquake hit in 1987, it proved hugely useful. Well, FEMA saw that, saw how well it worked, made it national. They standardized the curriculum, they made it into an all-hazards approach: hurricane, tornado, earthquake, fire, flood, terrorism, whatever it may be. And they made a standard curriculum, and now it's nationwide since 1993. It's a 20 to 24, depending on which agency you take it from. 20 is the minimum under the FEMA guidelines. It's a 20-hour class. You might take it over 7 weeknights, 7 consecutive Fridays at 3 hours a night. You might do what I did and do 3 all-day back-to-back Fridays or Saturdays. You might do an hour a night every night for 2-3 weeks. It all depends on how your particular class is run. But there are 7 components to CERT. Okay, in fact, I can tell you exactly what they are, because I still have my CERT book. All that stuff that's right there, that is my CERT kit. Okay, that is the kit that I assembled partly during and also immediately after the class. Excuse me. You have disaster preparedness. You have incident command system. This is partly what this gentleman here was talking about with the management structures and everything. Fire safety and suppression, hazardous materials, triage and basic first aid. We're talking emergency first aid, not, okay, now how do I deal with this from start to finish, but how do I get this person stabilized so I can get them to safety and then let medical personnel deal with it beyond that. Situation assessments, light search and rescue, disaster psychology, incident management. It goes through the whole gamut of stuff. It's an excellent class. Some agencies charge, like I believe Santa Clarita charges $25 or $35 for their class, but you get a nice little kit with it. The ones up here are free, okay? There is one that's going to be starting in the middle of March. It's going to be 7 weeknights, 3 Wednesdays followed by 4 Thursdays in March and April down in Acton, Agua Dulce area. That flyer, that information is already on this website. There is most likely going to be another one starting up here locally at the end of this month. Don't know the exact location. It's not going to be finalized till probably Monday, but just keep your eyes on this website, antelopevalleycert.com, and you'll be able to get the information for that. As far as the city's standpoint is concerned, if you're in Neighborhood Watch, those of you who might be here tonight, those of you who might be at home watching or hear about this from a neighbor or relative, we want one person at minimum in every single one of our over 200 Neighborhood Watch groups to be CERT trained. We're not asking you to sign up for a call-out team. In fact, there's no obligation to anybody who wants to take CERT to sign up for a call-out team. but we want at least one person CERT trained. That way, if something happens, and it's really a matter of when something happens, because it's not if. We live in earthquake country, whether we like it or not. We get fires every year in the mountains and hills around the LA basin, whether we like it or not. So it's a matter of when. So when something happens, somebody in every community will have some idea of what to do, how to organize their neighborhood, how to keep everybody calm, how to check on things, and it's going to make everything a lot smoother for emergency responders, for governmental agencies, because instead of having to keep track of 150,000 people and their individual needs, you'll have one person in each neighborhood. Okay, as a group, we need X, Y, and Z. It's a lot simpler. You know, if you need to put shelters up, well, you can know, okay, instead of, okay, we got this family, and then over here we got this family, and then down there we got 4 units out of that 6-unit apartment building, and you just, okay, this is our neighborhood, we need enough shelter for X number of people. It's a lot simpler. Things like that. We need enough food and water for X number of people. We need medical assistance of this variety, and they're all the people, we've got X number of victims at this spot. If we can get it one person in every neighborhood watch, we are going to be so happy. I'm looking at you because you're a block captain. So please, if you yourself don't want to do it, get somebody in your neighborhood. If we can get more than one in every group, even better. Okay? So it's something to think about. A CERT kit, I have my CERT kit here. Mine is basically an immediate response. And not immediate response in the idea of boots and helmet and gloves, so when you roll out of bed sleepy-eyed at 3 in the morning. But immediate response, like a go bag, a grab bag. I can grab this bag, walk out the door, and I can start helping people. And I've got the immediate supplies I need. I've got my wrench, so if I smell gas, I can shut it off. I've got a flashlight. I've got a hard hat. I've got goggles and a dust mask, so if there's dust in the air from settling debris, I'm still able to see and breathe okay. I've got a multi-tool. I've got Band-Aids and ACE wraps for those immediate things, so if I need to give somebody a gauze pressure compress, I can make one on the fly so I can get them out of there to safety without them bleeding to death on the way out. I also brought, and this is all my personal stuff, I'm just showing you. I also have a whole stack of these by my front door right next to that. And for those who may not be medically trained, you may not know this, these are just cardboard moving boxes cut up in different sizes. These work great as splints in an emergency. You can fold them up any way, shape, or form. I have different sizes because you never know. You know, this would work great for, say, a little kid. Put the foot there, put the leg there. I can make put a little cuts to my multi-tool and bend this up, wrap it around. Now they've got, it's basic, but it helps to stabilize just long enough to get that kid to safety. I've got larger ones for larger limbs, grown-ups. I have even bigger ones and longer ones at home. I have a whole stack of them because I don't know what I'm going to need or when I'm going to need it. So it's just, I'm not saying that you need to go to the whole, you know, craziness of being able to take care of your entire neighborhood single-handedly. But it might not be a bad idea to at least have a few things or to get in that mindset of thinking outside the box of how to improvise for those things you don't have. A tree branch, if you've got a small tree branch, you can use that and wrap some towels around it and you've got a splint that way along the leg or along the arm. All sorts of things you can do. Now when it comes to your disaster kits, if you don't want to assemble your own, you can buy a pre-made one. They come in different sizes for different size families. This is an example of a car kit that's basically a pre-made kit. It's got the drinking water pouches. It's got the emergency food bars, a first aid kit, some batteries, a flashlight, some Band-Aids. The pre-made kits are extremely convenient. They're well packed, so, I mean, it's like a grab-and-go bag or a big duffel. They can be more expensive than putting it together yourself. On the flip side of that, chances are, if you're putting it together yourself, you're going to save some money, but you might miss a few items and not even think about it. Like, for example, I have scissors in my go bag in case I need to cut something. If I need to cut some gauze, or if I need to cut some cloth to make a tie for a tourniquet or to tie a splint on or something like that. I've got tweezers in case somebody gets a nasty splinter and I need to get it out. All sorts of things. You might not think about those things. I'm not saying you need those things, but if you chose to have them. So, I know I've kind of thrown a ton of information at you guys tonight, Please take it home, read through it, go over it with your family, practice it. Kind of try to make it part of your daily life. Every day, try and think, okay, today, where is my meeting place? Tomorrow, who's my out-of-state contact? The next day, what am I getting from my disaster kit this month? The next day, what's PASS mean? Just do something each day to keep it fresh in your head. Practice drop, cover, and hold. Make sure everybody knows the plan and the out-of-state contact. Make sure you check your disaster kit every 6 months at least to rotate out any old items. Does anybody have any more questions? All right. Well, with that, and just as an example, this is a little bit more than a case of water, but this is enough for one person for 3 days. As they say, a gallon of water per person per day. Well, a standard case of water, 24 bottles, that's enough for one person for 3 days. So if you've got 3 people in your family, 3 cases will last you the minimum. So just a thought. And with that, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time, and I hope you got some good information out of it.